Good morning. We are into the sharp end of the season where dreams become reality. I'm Jack Collins and this is the UEFA Europa League Breakfast Show brought to you by Kia. You asked and we delivered, so here he is back again, the main man, Mr. James Allcott. Welcome back, my friend.
It's amazing. Dreams becoming reality for me as well. It's so good to be back. I'm delighted.
Don't forget to get in touch with the show using the hashtag UEL Breakfast to give us your thoughts on all things Europa League. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be discussing everything about tonight's two massive semi-finals, and we're bringing in some more very special guests. But first, James, we're at the semi-finals. This is where heroes are made.
Absolutely. Look, finals are great. I love finals, but I've got to say, I think I love semi-finals just as much, because when it comes to making history for your club, you know, you've got to get to the final to win it. And so these next 2 weeks for these clubs are huge, and for the players as well, because they will write their names in the history books if they can create some amazing moments for their clubs.
Yeah, and I think that's it, isn't it? We're going to be discussing cult heroes today. And we're going to define that term because it's quite a loose one, but it is about writing yourself into the mesh, into the fabric of the football club.
Specifically, that phrase of cult heroes, basically it means, you know, footballers that fans adore. That's what it comes down to. You know, it can be those number 10s that we all love. You think of Dimitri Payet for Marseille in the Europa League, or Marek Hamsik for Napoli. But also it can be those players that just sort of turn up for a bit, and when you think of that time and that season, you think of that player. Someone like Michu for Swansea.
Have that vision of Michu running riot at the Mestalla, right? And talking of the Mestalla, Pablo Aimar is someone who always jumps into this category for me. Now, I'm too young to remember Pablo Aimar properly, but he is Leo Messi's hero. And Leo Messi's always said, oh, Pablo Aimar was my idol growing up. And then you look back and you're watching him, and it's every time he gets the ball, electricity sort of crackling. You're like, it's going to happen, something's going to happen. And Henrik Larsson is someone else, you know, the look, the braids, the dreads, and the fact that he was just running riot through defences time and time again in this competition. There are so many different ways to do this.
And you know, the Europa League is completely littered with them.
We're going to be talking a little bit more about these players later on in the show, but first, let's take a look at tonight's fixtures. James, no one won. None of these four teams that won at the weekend. And there were rotations. Does this mean that they're focusing on this competition? Can you see that?
You know, when you get to this part of the season, there are a lot of games and you do have to make those choices. And it seems quite clear to me that for all of the teams, we're happy to kind of make a few tweaks. You don't get a second chance at this. You have to safeguard your squads for these games. And I think Cavani's a great example. Cavani's been in great form, but they couldn't take the risk because Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he himself, he won trophies, you know?
Yeah.
And so he wants to see that in terms of the evolution of this Manchester United team. And they're the hot favourites, aren't they, really?
Yeah, and let's bring it on to that game in particular. Manchester United, obviously, they play Roma. And the history between these teams is incredibly interesting. Roma have only ever beaten Manchester United once in the 6 games they played. That was a 2-1 win. And in the second leg, they then infamously lost 7-1 at Old Trafford, including a Daniele De Rossi consolation goal, which is up there with the best.
Never forget that.
Up there with the best consolation goals you'll ever see. But they go into this, however, with quite a lovely run in the Europa League.
Yeah, they've enjoyed this competition far more than their domestic league. But Roma, if they can almost stop thinking about the league for a second, you know, the likes of this man here, you know, I think he's already maybe a cult hero, but certainly if he gets an opportunity, he's got a great record against Man United. I think 5 goals in his last 4 games for them. You know, on the big occasion, he's stepped up before, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does it again.
In their last 15 games, United have conceded 8 goals, which is a phenomenal record in itself. And suddenly, this is looking at a United side that are very, very hard to beat.
This is where I think this one's really interesting, is stylistically, who's going to kind of stand off who? Do you know what I mean? There's not like Ajax, you knew they were going to dominate the ball. With this one, I'm not totally sure. What I do believe is that Man United maybe have a touch more quality and a touch more confidence than Roma. And I feel like for this team, as it looks to move forward, this season is a bit of a watershed for them. And the Europa League is, you know, it is that trophy that they need.
And if you think that's tasty, you should see the other fixture.
Unstoppable. And it's that man again. My goodness me.
Villarreal have been relatively comfortable in the knockout stages of this competition. They've played Dinamo Zagreb, Dynamo Kiev and RB Salzburg, and they are yet to be behind in a tie at all. So it has been smooth sailing for Unai Emery's men.
Yeah, smooth sailing, very nice for the Yellow Submarine, absolutely. I think you said something to me, I loved it. It was like, they're very useful. It's a very useful team. And I just like the way the sort of ebb and flow of the different characters and experience and I guess strengths and weaknesses of the squad that they've got at Villarreal.
They've looked comfortable against good sides as well, and I think it's important, that Salzburg side under Jesse Marsch were fancied, whereas Arsenal's progression to this point has been chaotic. It has been, the madness of that Benfica game, the comeback against Slavia Prague, and it's one of those things where you look at it and you think, what Arsenal are we going to see?
Yeah, and I think, look, Arteta will focus on the positives, and I think the positive is, of course, the result against Slavia Prague. And I think that's sometimes the thing that's kind of getting in their way. You've got a really young team, probably overall, a team that's maybe not certain of how good they are. And in that game, they kind of put that to the side and went, come on, let's get ourselves through to a semi-final, and did so. Against the sort of names and the experience of this Villarreal side, are they going to be able to retain that same kind of attitude to go and get at them? Because at different times this season, we have seen that with Arsenal. They've got a lot of talent there. The likes of Smith Rowe and Pepe in this tournament's done very well for them. Saka, of course, is fantastic. Those two strikers, Aubameyang and Lacazette, they're going to need that experience over the two ties. I think this is just going to be, it's just going to be so good. And that's before we even get into the narrative.
Yeah, of course. Villarreal managed now by former Arsenal manager Unai Emery, who of course took them to that final in Baku in 2019.
And again, what I think is going to be exciting about this is you've just got so much quality on the pitch, and I expect goals. I expect some good goals as well, and maybe a few from your man as well, Moreno.
Let's take a little look around social media, and we'll start with Roma. This week they shared this picture of Edin Dzeko dedicating his hat-trick against Victoria Plzeňa in the 2018 Champions League to Riccardo Calafiori, who earlier on that day had suffered a potentially career-ending injury in the UEFA Youth League against Plzeňa. And then fast forward a couple of years, and Calafiori is providing the assist for Dzeko to become Roma's all-time top European goal scorer in the UEFA League.
This is the kind of stuff we want to see on Twitter, isn't it? Because I think there's a life lesson there. First of all, the fact that hang in there, because for him to come back from that and to get to these heights is stunning. But also, I think it speaks volumes for Edin Dzeko. He's clearly got a big heart to go and do that at that moment in time, and it's so lovely to see them combining a couple of years down the line.
They were also celebrating, Roma, the 30th anniversary of them reaching their first and only UEFA Cup, Europa League final this week, and it seems fitting that this week they begin their charge to reach their second.
I think it's another great tweet to see, and it's, again, these big moments, these big finals, they're crucial.
And move on to Spain and Villarreal, who this week the players came out in t-shirts supporting their women's team, who had reached the top division of Spanish football for the first time.
Yeah, also really important, isn't it? You've got to shine a light on the women's game. I think we're all seeing how fantastic the product is and is becoming, and again, a great example of that support of the family within the club of Villarreal.
And to keep things on theme this week, we shared a thread of some of UEFA Cup Europa League's greatest solo goals, and some of the names in this thread are exactly what we've been talking about this week: cult heroes.
If there's one thing you do this week, it's check out that thread on Twitter and check out UEFA.tv, because there's so many great highlights from all of the old games.
If you want us to have a look at your tweets on next week's show, make sure you use the hashtag UEL Breakfast. We talked earlier about how this competition helps to turn players into cult heroes. Gerard Moreno's 6 goals so far for Villarreal have helped to cement his place in the hearts of fans at El Madrigal.
Al final, Villarreal es mi segunda casa, ¿no? Yo soy catalán, pero Villarreal también la considero como mi casa por todo el cariño que me transmiten. Sigo recibiendo ese cariño y es recíproco. El club ha estado cerca de esa final, pero poder hacerlo, poder ser la primera plantilla el lograrlo, en poder disputarla, pues sería un sueño enorme. Siempre lo he dicho, no nos tiene que obsesionar eso, pero sí que nos tiene que ilusionar, y esa ilusión a veces pues te tiene que hacer llegar a sitios donde no llegas habitualmente.
It's very obvious, James, that he has a very special connection with the fans there.
Yeah, which is interesting because he's Catalan, so he's not that your sort of local hero.
Yeah, and which is different, I suppose, to someone like Pau Torres. When he made his debut in 2016, he was the first player from Villarreal to play for the club for 13 years. And he has a special connection because of that. And it's like going back to what we were saying at the start, right? There are different ways in which you can become a cult hero, but locally sourced players is always going to be something that you kind of cling on to.
Locally sourced is always fresher. I always find. I really like Pau Torres. And in terms of cult heroes, he's kind of a new modern cult hero in terms of that young player that I think with him, Villarreal, I don't think they're sure how long they're going to have him to themselves. You know, there's a lot of demand for him this summer as a 24-year-old, and playing for the international side with Spain, I think that they know just how good Torres is, and they're embracing it and enjoying it whilst they can.
Manchester United have a flavour of this local produce as well, don't they? Scott McTominay comes to mind, Marcus Rashford comes to mind. But Marcus Rashford, off the pitch, particularly in this pandemic, has been spectacular in what he's done for the country and children across the country.
Yeah, some things are bigger than football, and I think Marcus Rashford has seen that, and I think for someone so young, I think he's inspiring both the generation behind him and actually maybe the generation in front of him. Those people thinking, what can I do? And also, there's no need to be afraid in terms of wanting to make good change, and that's what Marcus Rashford has done. I can only applaud.
I want to take it back into the dugout quickly for Mikel Arteta, who was a bit of a cult hero at Arsenal as a player, brought in from Everton obviously and made his mark, and is now trying to almost make the same change in the dugout to add a little bit of bite, a little bit of steel to that Arsenal team that were pretty, but perhaps a little bit soft at the core.
Yeah, it's quite a scary job to try and do that. Mikel Arteta, when you think about his career, bit of a cult hero at Rangers, bit of a cult hero at Everton, bit of a cult hero at Arsenal, all for the same reasons. He's been dipped in captain, if you know what I mean. He's that kind of centre midfielder, and Arsenal missed that once he left. Unfortunately, the problem as a manager is that it is solely on your shoulders, and it comes down to results. And so for him, he's had a bumpy road up until now. But again, we look at the next 2 weeks. If he can get this team to a major European final, then he's doing very, very well for himself.
And look, Arsenal haven't won a European trophy since 1994, so if he could push them over that line, he'd be achieving cult hero status almost instantaneously as a manager as well as a player, which is something that very few people do. Look, we could sit here and talk about our favourite players and favourite managers all day long, but this show isn't just about us, it's also about you guys. So we sent Josh Denzel out to find out what our viewers had to say.
Morning guys, and welcome to my humble abode. And since you're talking about cult heroes and fan favourites, we wanted to get a true fan perspective. None of the perfect person to call over my morning coffee. Huge Roma fan, pop star and social media sensation, Valerio Mazzei.
Non sei la prima ma vorrei che fossi l'ultima, che sappia prendermi come se fossi l'unica. Io che ho paura di crescere in fretta, tu che hai la cura di tenermi testa, ed ho provato a non...
Valerio, thanks for joining me this morning. It's great to have you on, and I know you're a huge Roma fan, but I want to know, how much have you enjoyed this season's UEFA Europa League?
I indeed am a huge Roma fan since I was little, and I'm really, really happy of how it's going. And I got a bit scared some parts, some matches, but we're still strong and we're still in the semi-finals, so let's hope it goes well.
I know that first leg, especially of the quarter-final against Ajax, there was some crazy moments. We had unbelievable volleys, penalty saves, absolute scenes. How did you feel watching the game?
When the penalty was saved, I jumped out of my chair, and when the amazing goal, I was like, that's incredible. It was a huge roller coaster of emotions, I swear.
And then you didn't make it easy for yourselves in the second leg, leaving it late. Obviously that Dzeko goal.
I was really, really tensed. As soon as Ajax scored, I was like, I can't believe it's over. We worked so hard for this. And as soon as Dzeko scored, I was like, a bit better. But I was still tense till the end of the game.
And now you've got Manchester United.
I'm really, really scared. because of the past, but I think if we put our mind to it and if they work really hard, maybe we can bring something out of it. I'm sure.
Dipingerei il cielo dei colori che tu preferisci con i miei. Io che ti amo come rischi che correrei per stare insieme più tranquilli, un po' più tranquilli e certe volte sono.
It seems like there's two loves in your life. You've got football and you've got music. Do you see any similarities between the two?
I also played football for 8 years of my life, and the passion I put on the field is the same as the passion I put in writing songs, because you need to put 100% of yourself in both. Like when I put 100% of myself in the music I do, when it comes out, I'm really, really, really stressed. I'm really scared people are not gonna like it. I'm really scared people are not gonna appreciate it. So the passion 100% is one of the main things they have in common.
With that, do you ever think that maybe like you'll have in the changing room some of the players playing your music, maybe in the stadium when fans are back?
I swear that would be one of my biggest dreams. It would be amazing. You know, also the music they put between the first half and the second half, like to entertain the audience.
Yeah.
When you go to the stadium, imagine playing one of my songs there. That would be a dream.
But it's not just, you know, you said you play football as well, and I know you're playing in a big charity game. I want to know, how good are you? Do you rate yourself very highly, and where do you play?
Okay, I'm pretty honest. I'm not bad, but I really loved football and I put all my passion into it. So I see myself as a decent player. I would say 7, 8 out of 10. I need to get better with shooting, because I'm not a shooting guy. I don't shoot. I always pass the ball. I'm not one of those who does a lot of goals. I'm one of those who does a lot of assists.
Have you got your own specific special celebration that you do every time you score?
Maybe I hug one of my teammates, like who gave me the assist. But one of my favorite exultations, of course, is the Totti, the one.
How long have you been a Roma fan? Because I want to work out who your cult heroes, who your Roma heroes are.
The people I love the most in Roma are definitely Totti, because he's a hero, and also the De Rossi. Like not only the way they play on the field, but the love they have for the shirt, like for Roma, and the attitude they have in real, like person to person. It's crazy. Like I met Totti at a restaurant at the beach in Rome, and he was like super, super, super kind. And that's what I love. The last match of Totti that stayed in my heart. It's one of the only moments I cried for football. I usually never cry, not because I'm a tough guy, because it just doesn't come to me. So not for TV shows, not for films, not for girlfriends. But when Totti left, I couldn't keep it in.
It was emotional. From the current squad, from your new crop of Roma players, who do you think can become a cult hero?
I sincerely hope Pellegrini stays in Rome, because I see so much potential in that kid, because he's like new, fresh. He's got all the attributes. He's really, really, really good. Lastly,
Have you got any words of encouragement? Anything that you want to say to the Roma players before the huge game against Manchester United in the semi-finals?
Okay. Listen to my songs before you play and we're going to win. Don't worry.
That's great. And that's all we've got time for, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for talking to us. And Forza Roma.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks to Josh, and thanks also to Valerio, whose new single, Per Davvero, is out now. Of course, Valerio named his cult hero as Francesco Totti. As a Roma fan, what else would you expect? But interestingly, Francesco Totti made his debut in this competition in 1995, 5 years before Valerio was born, and that perhaps signifies his kind of eternal appeal. The eternal captain in the eternal city.
I mean, when it comes to cult heroes, you're struggling to find more ingrained people within a club, because we've spoken about it a few times, the different elements that you can have, but for someone to be as good as he is, to play for as long as he did, 25 years, over 700 games, over 300 goals, for him to be, as fantastic as he was on the pitch, as magical and as good looking, is a big thing. I was watching some clips on fans talking about him, and they were saying that he's like the air, he's like the monuments when it comes to Rome. He is just, I can't even put it into words really, just how important he is to that city, because I think the big thing is for most fans, they didn't know life without him, which sounds like a good existence.
It's a good, good life, that. I envy them their lives. But that's it. In this competition, 40 games, 11 goals, but over a period of 22 years. And that is special. Along with our partners at Kia, we've been highlighting some of our favourite celebrations from the Europa League. In line with this week's theme being cult heroes, we thought we'd delve a little bit back into the archives to see some best celebrations from times gone by. It's always nice to see some of those again, James. What was your favourite?
I've got to say, I have utmost respect for Daniel Sturridge for that celebration, because people didn't like it, but he stuck with it. And sometimes you've got to do that in life. And so I'm still all about that. I still don't know what he's doing, to be honest. But great goal against Sevilla and a great celebration as well.
This season, Kia have collaborated with dance group 1M, who have been inspired to incorporate some of those classic celebrations into their dance routines. To see them and for more, check out Kia's YouTube channel. It's top 5 time, and this week we had to stay on brand. So we've asked James to pick out 5 of his favourite stories about cult heroes who've made their mark on the Europa League or its predecessor, the UEFA Cup.
So first one, I'm going to go sort of age before beauty, although he's quite beautiful as well. Joaquin.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Betis. Yeah, to be honest, I knew you wanted to talk about it, so I'll let you go in just a second. The one thing I want to say is the fact that for him to have his debut in 1999, that means he's played in 4 different decades. I think that's enough to be a cult hero.
Yeah, that's it. On its
Over
own.
to you. Over to you. What a player.
Joaquin is my favourite player of all time. He's one of very few players who get standing ovations at pretty much every ground they go to, maybe Sevilla aside. Look, he's become this kind of mischievous imp of the Spanish game, and he's goes on TV, he's hypnotised hens. I think maybe the maddest thing about that, and you kind of touched on it there about the 99 debut thing, is he was Spain's best player in the 2002 World Cup. And he's now played in this competition for Betis, obviously, for Fiorentina and for Valencia. It's that kind of boyhood element that's brought him back to Betis. He owns a bit of the club. There's something just really, really special about his relationship with Real Betis, but also the fact he's kind of adored across the park in Spain.
The next player I want to talk about is Diego from Werder Bremen, who led Werder Bremen to the final of the 2009 UEFA Cup. We haven't spoken enough about Brazilian players. This is a Cult Heroes themed show. We need to do it, and we're going to do it right now with a player who is just so silky and so brilliant for Werder Bremen. Scored double figures in all 3 of his seasons, but that final season, 2009, scored 20 in all competitions, but in the knockouts he scored 6 goals on the route to that final, and in particular the quarterfinals where he really made his mark.
Yeah, I was going to say, he was the engine of that team, and like you say, he was such a brilliant player in full flight and on a dead ball, everything you want. And I thought it was interesting that you said led them to the final, because there is that element of tragedy to this tale as well.
Yeah, of course. He got a booking in that semi-final, which meant that he didn't get to play in the final against Shakhtar Donetsk. If he'd been playing in that final, you just wonder, and to be honest, I wonder if that endears him to the fans even more. Next up, I'm going to go for Iñaki Williams from Athletic Club. The reason for this is a player he's only 26, but it's the consistency of him and the amount of starts that he's had. He hasn't missed a game since April 2016.
To be injury-free and the type of player he is very, very rare. He's quite explosive, quite dynamic, and to carry that through a 5-year period where you don't miss a single domestic game, and in that time play all 18 Europa League games that Athletic Club have been a part of, is absolutely mad. And he's now obviously Athletic's record consecutive appearance holder. He's second in the all-time domestic consecutive appearances list. And on top of all of that, he's just gone and signed a 9-year contract.
Yeah, and I love how he plays as well, to be honest. I love that he looks to get in behind. I think he plays with a smile on his face as well. And you know, those 9 years, I think it highlights that for him, that is the pinnacle. And ultimately, he cares. And that's all that fans care about, is that the player themselves cares. And you can see that with Iñaki Williams. Now, it is the semi-final, so I was looking for links for my next pick, and there it was right in front of me. Santi Cazorla, who of course played for Arsenal and for Villarreal. And with him, it's the comeback story. And what a comeback story, because it was over. His career was over. If you look at he had this terrible ankle injury which got infected. There was talk that not playing again, it was that he might never walk again because it was so badly infected. They thought he might lose his foot as well. And so for a player who was just so stunning and so brilliant, it was so heartbreaking to see him go through that and go back to his first senior club in Villarreal. It's a stunning, beautiful story from a stunning footballer.
I think that's it. It's the courage and the soul to be told you might never walk and then play football, but then to drop the season he had at Villarreal and to drop that kind of spell where he was majestic, running games again. He made 86 appearances then for Villarreal after returning from Arsenal and became their highest ever goal-scoring midfielder.
Finally, and we can't have this list without this player, because you talk about number 10s. And the fact that there's hundreds of number 10s that have become cult heroes at thousands of clubs. But it all starts with one guy. And Diego Maradona is that guy. For him, I think he's everyone's cult hero. I think he's football's cult hero. He was so magical. And this is a player that we didn't see live, but we've all gone down that YouTube wormhole where you just look at clip after clip or him warming up before a game. Just an unbelievable player. And I think the fact that he went to Napoli and he had that connection with Napoli, I think it makes him even more special for me.
And Naples is a quite mythical place. It has these kind of remnants and ghosts in it. And the story that always springs to mind with this is the banner in the graveyard after they won these trophies, and it said, "You don't know what you missed." And the next morning they woke up and the banner said underneath, "Who said we missed it?"
And of course, this season, Diego Maradona passed away, and you saw with the outpouring of love from the wider football community, but in particular, Napoli, renaming the stadium the Diego Maradona Stadium. I think it was fitting for one of the greatest, if not the greatest player of all time.
Right, mate, so we've just got time to put you back on the spot one last time. Last time out, you predicted a Manchester United Villarreal final. Are you sticking with that prediction?
I will not be budging. It's going to be the same. Although, I think that Arsenal performance against Slavia Prague was very impressive. So this one might be a bit closer, but I think this will be the final.
And to win it still?
Man United still to win it, I think.
Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's Europa League breakfast. And all that's left for me to do is say thank you very much to Mr. James Allcott.
My pleasure.
Don't forget to get in touch using that hashtag UEL breakfast. Enjoy tonight's fixtures. I'm off for some pastel de nata. See you next time.